Doing some low fire. Let's look at that number. Alright, it's been a while. We got Lily participating today. Well, let's get some throwing in there. And we're gonna throw as like dry as possible, because we want to be portable. So this is already a lot of water. Let's keep that in mind, like, what can I do with a quart of water? We should wedge this first. I haven't done clay in a while. I'm kneading a lot of bread dough, and this is not like that at all. But we got a nice ring in there. We got some nice folds. It's pretty good. It's pretty soft. It's not the softest. It is pretty soft. But we're gonna give it a go. And I think this is 6 times 4, 24. This is probably just over a pound of clay right now. It's not a ton. Let's straighten off as best we can. I'm gonna re-wet this just to get it a little wet. Hey, Marcy. Hey, puppy. Alright. Oh, try close. Bam. Bam. Not turning it on until I get this squeezed down in a nice middle. Just from forming this. And we're just pushing down a little bit. Just moving towards that middle. Like, you can spend as long as you want on this freaking step of just like patting the clay towards the middle, because that makes it super easy to actually center it, because we need to be able to like make a pivot point. And you can see it's a little wobbly, but I want to ground my fingers in here. And you can see that lever that I'm starting to make, where it's like pressed in a little bit more on the sides, and you can see more of this clay shooting down on this 2/3 of it. Then this third of it is a little bit flatter, and that's where we're taking this 2/3 of the clay and pushing it in towards like the 1/3 of the clay. So it kind of like hides it, but I'm just coming in, pushing that clay up and towards the middle, just dryly pushing this up, and we're just pulling that clay towards the middle. Like, it's called centering. It's where you center the clay in the middle, and what you're trying to do is get as much clay in the way of like where you actually work it. And I try to move it where, see this little bit I've got, unfortunately I pulled off, and there's no way to really squeeze it back down into. You can see like I kind of did it here. That's where we can wedge it back in if we want, and re-wedge this towards the middle. We're going in and just pulling this up and towards the middle and trying to like round it off as it goes and pulls that in. So I'm starting way on the outside. I'm going to start with all of this. You can use a rib for this, but your fingers can do it. Your fingers can push clay. It's not that bad. So most people want them pretty wet, but if your clay is elastic enough, like, you should put the water into the clay. Like, why add it afterwards? It should just be wet enough to kind of move a little bit. It should be worked into it. And if you don't, if you got like a pretty firm block of clay, you can just like, well, you can stick a dowel in there and just wedge it around and make like a little cone shape on the inside. And then do like 6 of those in the block, and then fill it with water, and it'll absorb all that water back into the clay pretty evenly. It kind of like does like ground clay, and just disperses that water into it, makes it nice and elastic again. Or if it's like dead, you can just drill holes into it with a drill bit and do the same process, and it'll take it from a dried block all the way back to a usable block of clay without having to break it down into, you know, small pieces with a hammer and then rehydrating all of that individually. So what did we get so far? Wow, we got some clay towards the middle and a wonky front still. So let's go into this top and see what we can do to kind of work that clay back in. I'm kind of just finding that middle point, squishing some clay around. You can see where I kind of just like squished it into that next layer right there. We can come back over and just be light, try to find all that clay, just push it all towards the middle. So I want to be a little wetter than that. Let's get some wetness on our hands, and we want to pull this up towards the middle a little bit more. I don't even know what we're going to make yet. I think it needs to be wetter than this to operate, though. I feel pretty centered. I feel like I want to open this a little bit, and I'm using my pinky right now to find that middle and kind of flatten off this top, which is not my usual way. A lot of people go in with their thumbs like this, and they find that nice little middle opening, and they go in either with both or one of them and just press down into that middle point. But we can kind of start to think about it, move that clay more as a wall, start moving it upwards, because I want this to be taller. I don't really want it wider than this. This is about as big as I could get on my mobile wheel. So we can take this pound of clay, make our dome. I'm going to start opening that up, but holding a rigid wall. That way I can press down into the middle. And we're just going to like put a tiny bit of water in there. It's not going to want to like go great. It's like, you know, it wants to just move out. And we're kind of lipping it and forcing it upwards at the same time. And we're going to want to combine that clay as we do that. But we're opening rather aggressively. I think given what most people do, we're trying to deal with quite a bit of clay and keep it all centered relative to how thin it's going to be later. I have no idea what people talk about, like the 5 o'clock position. Is that where we're supposed to be so you can film it? Wow, that's really pulling on that tendon right there. I usually go to the 12 o'clock position, that way I can have this whole hand here. And this guy's just up here pulling that part, and then we can come back over, use this. Maybe that's where I get into the 5 o'clock, where I'm pulling with my thumb over and shaping the rest of it with my fingers here and rolling that clay over. We've got a little bit on our hands by now, not a ton, you know, we're getting there. This is pretty dry. Don't need to make a huge mess. You can, but you don't gotta. And you can use a bunch of tools, but you don't gotta. You can do it with your hands. Trying to find that bottom, and that 5 o'clock position's not feeling too bad. And I can pull up from this with my index finger, bringing that inside in a little bit. I'm still shaping this top with my pointer. I'm pulling that in. So I'm just kind of pulling this clay towards that middle there. I'm going to come back into my 12 o'clock position, start to pull a little bit of that clay back in so I get a nice round indentation. And we're going to work on, I think, thinning out this bottom and getting a first, like, really firm pull up the side of this. So I'm using my index fingers. I feel something. There's a tiny little grit of something, even though this is supposed to be clean. Hopefully it's not an air bubble. So we're pulling that up. I got one little pull there. I feel like it's starting to twist on me, so I'm going to get a tiny bit wetter. I'm going to come over to this other position and really hold this back in. Well, he's looking at something out there. No, we're not getting that great amount of height. The slow parts, keeping up the bottom, keeping up the bottom. hate when I lose some clay off of it. But that's what happens sometimes. I'm messing with this top. Feels a little wobbly. And it feels like it doesn't want to go up evenly. Ooh, we got a little bit of a rim there. Nope. That's bad news bears. Look at that. Ew. 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 Alright, we done so? That's what people want. Bam. Pot number 1 finished. JK. That's just where we trim it. But I swear to God, I could sell this. Let's cut it off. How low can you go? What? This is what I gave up for you. Look at this. I don't know. Alright, let's get into this one. I think we want to go a little bit slower. I think that's where we're at. No one look at the top. Alright, sorry, trim. I'll come back for you, Clay.
I want to compress the clay.
You get in there. Space between. This spot's being goofy. It's thick. It's thick on one side. I want to really open up this bottom, but the top wants to disobey me. So we're trying to hold that top in. I'll press that bottom out. I know, Lily. It's a hard pull. It's a hard pull. You don't even know what's happening. Look at that beauty. Look at that wide base. Fuck you. You get stuck in my palm. Yeah. What's that? Like a 4 or 5 inch bottom? What do we think, boys? And we can even it out even more.